This is me. Here I am with some friends. Here I am with a different set of friends. No big deal. Where I'm from, you get a little bit of everything. Where exactly is that? A place that's 30 minutes outside of New York City. A place where he's from, she's from, her too. She went to my high school. This legend did too. And this sport was invented there. 2021 marked 20 years since my high school graduation. And like many events, a 20th reunion didn't happen because of the COVID-19 global pandemic, which is disappointing because with everything that's gone on the past few years, I'd love nothing more than to reminisce on simpler times and swap memories about a place I love.
A melting pot, for lack of a better term.
Maplewood's a great town to raise a family.
Picturesque. I would describe South Orange as picturesque.
Everyone's so friendly and welcoming, like the downtown's so cute.
Neighbors could not believe what was happening.
It's beautiful. It has beautiful old homes, 100-plus-year-old trees. It's very green, culturally expressive people, socially conscious people.
Education system is really good too.
What we're trying to create is some equity in the system.
Open to progressive ideas.
And I do see the Black Lives Matter. I do see Stop Asian Hate. I do see the gay pride flags.
Families in Maplewood, New Jersey are struggling to understand what led to a fatal shooting in a park.
It's like a great place for your kid to grow up so that you can make sure your kid is around all different types of people.
To see if I was the only one feeling a little nostalgic, I reached out to a few of my Columbia High School classmates.
I grew up in Maplewood.
What street did you live on?
I lived at 28 Harvard Avenue. I was right across the street from Tuscan Elementary School.
I grew up in South Orange. I lived on Lenox Avenue.
I grew up in Maplewood. I lived on Burroughs Way off of Parker Avenue.
So a combination of both because we moved a lot. So I started in Maplewood, went to South Orange, and then ended my high school tour in Maplewood on Valley Street.
Midland Boulevard, so it's just up the street from the high school.
I grew up in South Orange. I lived on 4th Street off of Valley and Academy.
My best friends are all people who I went to high school with.
We would go to Bagel Chateau or Village Trattoria in Maplewood. But a lot of times we would just eat on the field also.
Ultimate Frisbee was like a big thing that we did. It was like part of our identity.
I also did drama club. I also did All School Musical.
It was junior year of high school, I want to say, and Lauryn Hill was being inducted into the Columbia Hall of Fame. And I remember I went to one assembly and I cut class and went to the next one because I wanted to see her again.
This is our senior year yearbook. I have no idea what my yearbook quote was. Promise you'll never forget me, because if I thought you would, I'd never leave. Winnie the Pooh. Thanks, Mom, Dad, Steph, family, and friends. No day but today.
Growing up is the process of creating ideas and dreams about what life should be. The maturity is letting go again. Thanks to my family and friends, and then a bunch of random initials of people who I don't talk to anymore.
You live life once, so live it to the fullest.
It says, life's a journey, not a destination. Thanks, Mom, Dad, family, and friends. Advice, don't be stifled.
I don't have a quote.
The things that we're afraid of are going to show us what we're made of in the end.
That first day filming in the high school was incredible. Never could I have imagined what was about to happen next.
Begin this noon with breaking news. Police are investigating a shooting in Maplewood, New Jersey that left one high school student dead and another injured.
It is not clear how many other students were involved. A school email to parents referred to, quote, a few of the students being in a horrible situation last night.
Maplewood police and the Essex County Prosecutor's Office are investigating with no arrests so far. No one came to the door at Fofana's home. Friends say he took good care of his mother and his little brother, and that they made him a better young man.
Hawa Fofana.
What do you do for work?
Hair. I do hair. and I also sell clothes, but mostly African brand.
Where did you grow up?
Two places. I grew up in Africa, and I came here when I was like 18. So the growing continue.
Where in Africa did you grow up?
Liberia.
What was that like?
It was not bad, but it's different from over there. Over there and here is different. And sometimes we go fishing and looking for fruit, orange, mango, like all those things gonna enjoy when I was home.
When did you first start to realize something was wrong that night?
When my son friend called and he saying he got shot. And first I'm like, okay, just a shot. You know, people get shot and they survive. So, and the police, when he called me and I hang up the phone on him, when he said shot, I like hang up the phone on him and call my son. But when I call him, it's the police that pick up. So I knew it was like serious. And they came to pick me up and they brought me at Maplewood police station. And I was there for several hours, you know. I guess they were still trying to like work on him and see if he was gonna make it. They were still trying to work on him. They didn't want to tell me right away like what happened. And while I sit there and as time go, like where is he making noise? Is he in the ambulance? Is he in the hospital? Where the shot happened? Is he still there? Can you guys take me there? And be patient, be patient, be patient. And we were sitting there for a while, and finally the detective, they came and they break the news to me. So it was difficult.
My name when you met me was Jennifer Almario, and now it's Jennifer Dalton. I'm a teacher at Columbia High School. We came in the next morning and we had an email from the principal at 7 a.m. I think I didn't open my email till probably 8:30, that something had happened. And of course, I texted my son because I was like, well, Instagram's going to know before we do.
It just seemed so random, so unfortunate.
Shocked, devastated, scared, utterly confused.
I'm Debbie Jones. I'm here at U Street in Maplewood. I've been residing here since 1997. May sound corny, but God just let me here. The 9th of July, I hear what I thought was a reoccurrence of fireworks, but it was not. It was gunshots. And I came from the back of the house to the front of the house to see what was going on. But by the time I walked to the front of the house, the police, fire engines, all type of EMS had already arrived at the block. And there was a young man who was shot in the back twice that laid right in front of my front door. There was another victim who laid in the street a couple of doors down from me. But, you know, everything it was just a terrible, terrible night, and it just really made you afraid. It all started a year ago, in the pandemic year, during the summer, and there were a few youths that hung out on the street and, you know, smoked the cannabis and that. Then when the season ended, we're going to wintertime, then of course the crowd fell off. Nobody's hanging out in the street and it's cold. But as soon as spring of 2021 arrived, it's like they picked up where they left off. Also during that time, we had a police officer that lived a couple of doors from me. I pulled him from his home like, you're fired. You know, you can't, you know, you're not doing anything. You don't see that. He told me that it doesn't bother me. and that they're not going to do anything because of the Black Lives Matter group, as if they were afraid or didn't know how to address this situation on a one-on-one for fear of retaliation.
To clarify, because this is happening, it started happening months or just shortly after the killing of George Floyd.
Exactly.
Well, I believe the whole department is aware of some complaints.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm not allowed to make any comments on any kind of internal affairs matters or any kind of internal affairs complaints, of course.
Fair enough.
We know there have been some quality of life complaints there and so forth. And the police department has sent officers out. We've conducted details to address those complaints.
We were calling the police off and on for quite a while, since the spring when the crowd started to gather again. To no avail did we get any help at all, or even any advice. When you called to the police department, you were asked a number of questions as if you were taking a survey. Well, how many of them is it? What are they doing? We can't move people from public property. The street is public property. They would come through, look at them, keep on riding.
What was the result of these officers being sent out? Because it seems like that there wasn't any resolution after those officers were sent out.
Well, I don't know if that's necessarily the case. I mean, when an issue is ongoing, it's ongoing with the residents that live there. When the officers is there, the issue is resolved. But when they leave, or if they have to leave, or if we have to change shifts, or if we have to respond to something else, the person or the people or the potential issue still lives on the block. Mm-hmm. So it's not that it's not being addressed and resolved, it's just ongoing.
This went on for some time. It became a real eyesore and a real concern for the residents of this street. Because of that, we had a meeting, start having meetings. They began in the month of June, and we would meet every Wednesday. We called it a meet and greet. Everybody wore name tags, and it was basically just to really get to know who your neighbors were on a personal level, and also to share our concerns about what was happening to the neighborhood with this crowd. So every Wednesday during the month of June, we met. During that time, we would have different events that went on. The mayor would come. The chief of police showed up one time. The police captain showed up one time.
Well, any type of, community approach is ongoing. If there's an issue, some neighborhoods have block party associations where they have block parties that they organize on their own, and we come out so that they can, have direct conversation with us, direct contact with the township officials, DPW. They can meet some of the employees of the town to make those type of connections so that we can personally hear and address their issues. That's been done numerous times before.
In one of our events during the month of June, speaking to one of Maplewood's captains, and I asked her, tell me it's not so. She said, what do you mean? I said, there's nothing that the police can do. And her response was, Black people need to take care of Black people's problems.
Yeah, I don't remember that. But yeah, I don't know.
Do you recall the meet and greets that were happening on Hughes Street back in June?
I recall being on Hughes Street a couple of times. I mean, it's with so many residents there. Mm-hmm. I meet a lot of people. Without, with that being the whole context, I guess it's very difficult for me to remember that in particular. Yeah, because the thing is, if I would have said something even similar to that, that would not have been the complete statement or the whole context.
Can I?
Because I feel like that's like so snippetish of a. If I would have had some type of conversation, that's very snippetish of what I would have said.
And it wasn't until the night of the gunshots that then we finally got recognition that this is a problem and that it needs to be addressed, and that we can't go out there as bounty hunters trying to resolve this ourselves. People were afraid of retaliation if they said something. The couple of neighbors that did say something to them got just cursed out. And then you have family members that are afraid for your life, urging you not to confront them.
A New Jersey community rallies for justice in the shooting death of a teenager. Dozens of friends and classmates joined the family of Musa Fofana at a rally in Maplewood tonight. The 18-year-old student was killed on June 6 as he walked on the grounds of Underhill Sports Complex.
This beautiful boy has passed on, and who have not had justice since. We want justice for this beautiful boy.
Whose idea was it to have the rally for Musa?
It was me. It was me. And the candle lighting, that was the school. And as the week go by, and I wasn't hearing anything from the police, even though they were doing their work, but I wasn't hearing anything like they arrest the person, you know, or we have a suspect. So I was frustrated. So I came up with a rally. And I have friends that help out with it. I was shocked because I didn't know that the amount of people that came out, it was going to come out. So I got a lot of support from Maplewood, the people, and the South Orange. And my community, they also came out in support of Musa.
There was a vigil, which was incredible and horrible. Like, horrible to see his friends, mostly his friends and teachers at that one, in such pain. And in that one, if you didn't know Musa, you really got a feel for who he was. Though I don't think anybody was placing blame on it not being solved or why isn't this solved. More like this needs, to keep it in the public eye.
It's hard for me to not see the shooting on Hughes Street and the killing of Musa at Underhill Sports Complex as related. Not just because they're acts of senseless violence that took place in the same town, weeks apart from each other, but I feel like they both are incidents that could have been avoided.
Could have happened to any one of us. It seemed extremely random, and it could happen to any one of us or any of our children living in these suburban towns that we think are just so safe, and this could only happen in one of the urban Essex County towns.
I think it just reminds you that for as safe as you ever feel, something can always happen.
My name is Destiny Foley. We moved around a few times in Maplewood. I lived on Menzel Avenue, Burnett Avenue, and Garfield Place.
My name is Reggie Lamptey. So I grew up on South 4th Street. Behind me, what you see is part of the Underhill Sports Complex.
So Underhill Field is the high school track. It's not on site for the high school. It's 4 to 5 blocks away, like a 10-15 minute walk away from the high school.
And in the township, it's very close to the border of South Orange. It's in a residential area, so the sports complex is literally surrounded by houses.
The front main gate is typically locked for entry, but now that I'm thinking about it, it's really locked so that cars cannot get in. There's also a smaller opening that you can walk through that might not be always locked at night because people do jog and use the track. Other than securing the entrances, maybe cameras.
Kids hang out there. Before this happened, Musa hang out there, and you also practice on that field. And you also run over there. So they just need to just pull security. And the better lighting too at night so the kids can be safer.
Diane Trimper. I grew up in the house where I live in Maplewood, New Jersey. I've been in that house for 73 years. It was a wonderful experience. I loved nature, and we abut the golf course, and so there were always trees, birds, playground in the backyard. That was just wonderful. I had both parents all my life. They were always home. My father worked as a mechanic. He went out every day at the same time, came back at the same time. There was a certain specific rhythm, but I didn't feel that it was, that we were brought up tough.
I'm a real estate agent. I grew up on Church Street.
What was Church Street like?
Very family oriented, very multi-generational. South Orange as a whole during that time was multi-generational. You mostly had kids and parents that went to the same school. My dad graduated from Columbia High School as well. My dad was also one of 10, so a majority of his brothers and sisters still lived in the area they grew up on, between Church and 3rd Street. There were also other large families that did the same, so it was almost like everyone was related. A neighbor would kind of be like your uncle or your aunt, and just everyone looked out for each other. Everyone was in each other's business, but in a very helpful manner.
My name is Amy Lutz. I'm a real estate agent in Essex County. I grew up on Long Island in Garden City South, right on the cusp of Franklin Square. And then when I was going to college, my parents moved to Manhattan, and they've been there ever since.
What was it like growing up on Long Island?
Very different than here. It was not my favorite place to be. Had a lot of friends. I was very social, but it didn't feel very structured. It was not diverse. It was didn't feel like I belonged to a tight community, and I felt a little lost. When my husband and I met, I lived in Manhattan and he lived in Brooklyn, and my husband is born and raised in Manhattan. So when we met, he told me that he would never move to the suburbs. And then one day he woke up and said, "I'm done with the city. I've been here my whole life. I'm ready to move out."
My name is Frank McGeehee. I was born and raised in Chicago, South Side, High Park, and it's a great place to grow up. It was, when people talk about diversity, it was truly that in all senses of it. And I think a lot of communities aspire to be what I had in High Park. Well, I live in Maplewood. If I didn't, I'd be in big trouble right now. Yeah. So, and I live on a small cul-de-sac by the train tracks, basically. Probably 13, 14 houses on that block. We're a real tight-knit community, which I love. I think there's something about Maplewood is that if you live where you live in terms of your neighbors, really, I think, make or break your Maplewood experience. So it's always been something that I've wanted to do. And, if the avenue was there, then I obviously took the avenue, but if it wasn't there, then I found other ways to serve. So it's always been part of my DNA. I became mayor January 1st of 2020. So like I said, like the last 20 months or so. And, when you have this opportunity, you have a platform, you have a vision, there's things you want to get done, there's things you want to work on, and, ideas. And, 2.5 months in, COVID really hit.
We have declared that a COVID-19 local emergency exists within the Township of Maplewood, and that a state of emergency for the Township of Maplewood is in effect as of 11 p.m. on Thursday, March 12th, 2020.
And that's been a challenge. I mean, that's gone from something that wasn't even conceptualized to being like a fixed asset, right? Like everything has to evolve around that.
Well, it's been, I think of two things: a roller coaster, number one, and I don't like roller coasters. That you never knew where the next turn was going to be and how far down it was going to go, and there's a euphoria about having made it through the week. And that gratefulness of neighborly care. As a senior, they were saying, "Do not go to the store. I will get it for you. Do not do." And one time, when one neighbor asked me something, I said, "Well, I'd really like some fresh apples," because I had lots of canned goods, freezer stuff, lots of things. I was making bread. It was, there was a lot that I already had that was okay, but fresh produce was really special. And they brought me apples and left them at the door and let me know that they were there. And when I saw them, I just felt like, and cherished them, that they were, and it brought tears to my eyes, fresh apples. You know, and I thought of how people around the world, literally now, whether it's because of disease, whether it's because of stigma, leprosy, jailing, whatever it is, that you're dependent on others to bring those goods to you. And if they don't come, you're lost. And just to identify with that just a little bit. And it was just very gratifying to have people care.
So last summer, when we went into the lockdown, I would say the team got together and we're like, okay, this is it. Like, it's going to be a rough year. And then I think about 3 to 4 weeks after that, it was nonstop. It was the busiest I've ever been. Everybody wanted out. Everybody wanted it out of the city and into here. I had clients saying, like, just I'll buy a sight unseen. So it was a little frenzied, I would say. It since has settled down a bit, but it's been intense. And I mean, thankfully, I've benefited from that. But I feel really bad. Like, my heart goes out to buyers in this environment because it's tough.
It's been fun if you represent a seller because they're getting multiple offers, majority of them over asking, and they're able to make a profit on their home and maximize on all the equity they built in their home recently. If you represent a buyer, it's really tough because they're battling against 10, 15, sometimes 20 other buyers. Homes in this Midtown direct train line that run across, let's say everything from South Orange, Maplewood, Milburn, on down, even Orange and East Orange, the average home is selling for 110, 115%, sometimes over asking. And it's a shock to buyers when they put in what they consider a solid offer, and you did as well, and they're beat out by $30,000, $40,000, $70,000.
I'm still mic'd up, right? I'm gonna just go ask her what's the listing. Before we walked up to the property, we were trying to ballpark what it'd be. I said, it'll be high 7s and probably go for 9. The house is starting at 1.5, and I wouldn't be surprised if it went for like 1.6, 1.7. But that's just the proximity, the size. Again, 5-bedroom home, 3.5 baths, walking distance to the village. These are the homes that people think about and dream about when they think about Maplewood. It's impressive.
If I told you, so fill in the blank, people are paying $100,000 over asking for a house in Maplewood, South Orange, you would say that's
outrageous.
It's crazy.
Crazy to think.
Infuriating.
Astounding.
I would say that's crazy, and I also think that's temporary.
Problematic. Not surprising.
Super wild.
Normal.
Sorry, did you ask for one adjective or like 15?
It's also a strategy that realtors are using. They're pricing the home slightly under market value. So they're going to put a little, let's say the home is worth $550,000. They'll list it at about $505, $510. So everyone says, oh, wow, looking on Zillow, Trulia, Realtor.com, whatever. Wow, this is a great deal. Boy, oh boy, I got to check this house out. They'll have an open house we refer to as a mega open house. They'll market the heck out of it. There'll be lines around the corner for the open house. And then there'll be, they'll feel the whole competition while they're in the home. Oh, wow. They love the home. They love the home. They love the home. I have to come in with a strong offer. Everyone will do the same. Next time they're going to do, a few days later, they're going to say, hey, we have 10 to 15 offers. This is what we're going to do. We're going to do a highest and best round. We're going to now say, everyone come with their strongest offer by Friday at 5 p.m. We'll all present them to the sellers. And then by the end of the day, we'll come out with a decision. So that would usually have this price home that's at 505. Offers maybe came in at 530, 540, 550. What the home is really worth, it's going to end up skyrocketing somewhere to 600, 620. So that would be the 100,000 over ask.
My name is Michael Abdul Kawi. I grew up in Maplewood on the corner of Valley Street and Girard Place. My grandparents purchased the home in 1979, and this is where my mom raised me and my 2 younger brothers. This split-level home was the center of my universe long before I realized it was conveniently located. We were walking distance to every level of school, Memorial Park, Maplewood Village, and the Maplewood train station.
The Midtown direct train line being added in '96. It took away an extra 20 to 30 minutes off of a commute before you had to go to Hoboken, take the path under the Hudson River to go to Penn. Now you're going directly to Penn, and that opened it up. And what it also did was it raised the value of the homes, and raised the value of the land, which added to taxes.
My name is Donald Imogene. I've been working for New Jersey Transit for 10 years. What people get wrong about my job is what they see on the train is all that encompasses the job. It's a whole lot more than that. I won't get into details, but what you see is 1% of what the actual job entails. Like most jobs that have to deal with the public, I do believe we get the brunt of people's frustrations and anger when things are not in order, which we ourselves have no control over.
But when COVID hit, it seemed like there was just this overwhelmingly exodus from the city.
After 9/11, there was also some desire to leave the city, and now in the pandemic, there's been another rationale for not paying the prices, as well as feeling that somehow this was more wholesome, that there was more open space, there was more just more room here than there was where they were in New York.
Any town that's on these train lines, the New Jersey Transit train line, that it really is a stimulation of economic development, right? Because in the township of Maplewood, case in point, the train that drops off in the Maplewood Village, and right there when you come off the train, I mean, you have an assortment of retail and other businesses, small businesses that you can obviously patronize.
The street I grew up on is, of course, different. There's two sides of the street. There's the dead end part, and then there's the Church Street that goes to South Orange Avenue. I would say probably 70-80% of the homes have been knocked down and built into luxury apartments / condos. The ones that are still standing look exactly the same, like those peach pink apartments, they've always been there. These were, I had family that lived across the street. This used to be one large multi, like a 2 or 3 family, and I think in 91, 92, they knocked it down and built the townhomes. And this was shocking to this area. This was before you obviously seen the luxuries come up. This was before the Midtown Direct in '96. This was built here, and it was like, whoa, nice, wow, what's going on Church Street? There were probably, I'd say about 5 to 7 kids in each home.
A
lot of fun, and everyone looked out for each other. Let's say someone had a problem. Let's say someone had a problem somewhere at middle school, or someone had a problem in high school. We'd all go together collectively and say, "Hey, what's going on? You messing with Bobby? You messing with Tommy?"
Out for each other.
Exactly. I mean, not looking to start anything, but at the same time, we didn't want to be taken advantage of like no one does.
If I told young Anwar there was a place on Church Street going to go for $1.3 million, would you believe that?
I definitely wouldn't have. I would say you're bugging.
Just watching all that develop, then coming home to South Orange to visit my parents and see some of the old buildings that were there now becoming apartment complexes. I saw in Maplewood that they moved the post office to put a housing complex.
I've noticed, and a lot of people have noticed, honestly, is the closer you are to a train station, the more you'll see condominiums or apartment complexes being built, like with direct access to the station or not too far away from the station with a shuttle. More of these type of places are being built all along the railroad. I mean, at each and every station stop. It's pretty crazy, actually.
And the New York Times had an article, but I had known that it was desirable before then, but that definitely just reinforced it.
I am looking at what I consider to be the article that changed everything.
Maplewood, New Jersey, if Brooklyn were a suburb.
My thoughts when I first saw the article was like, wow, we're being compared to Brooklyn. Everyone knows New York City and Brooklyn and the energy that that particular borough does have.
I remember seeing that article and being like, no, don't tell anyone, because I didn't want anyone to find out about this thing that felt so precious to most of us.
That was a really interesting article. I remember receiving it from my parents, receiving it from kids I grew up with. and reading it and just like laughing, because to me it's the same town it has always been, but when this label was placed on it, it became the ultimate hotspot. And everything in the article was right, but it really glorified things that I never thought twice about. I kind of took for granted, you know, as a kid growing up in the town.
The first thought was just like pretty cool to see your hometown in print like this, like major publication, obviously. So it's like kind of putting it on the map in a sense. The first line says, just call it Brooklyn West. Maybe you didn't care so much for the title. Like maybe Brooklyn is Maplewood East, right?
Yeah, my initial reaction is an eye roll.
It was just like a little frustrating that all these people who had no attachment to the place read an article, thought it was cute. How this, you know, disposable income, because let's face it, if you can afford to live in New York City, like the majority, I mean, like a lot of people are like working in finance and make like ridiculous amounts of money. So they can like come here easy. And when something's more desired, it becomes more expensive, supply and demand, you know?
It certainly gives it some kind of class and some kind of draw. But like anything else, I think that it depends on whoever is producing or writing whatever it is, or even speaking to someone. They choose what they want to project.
Do you think an article like that takes away from the mystique of Maplewood, South Orange?
That's a really loaded question, especially for a real estate agent. I guess in some ways it could, for sure. But it's inevitable. Change happens. People catch on. Stories get out there, and and then people want a piece of it. So it's bound to happen, right? And if you want to talk about sort of today's market and what's happening, I mean, it's happening everywhere. People are moving and shifting and transitioning because of the pandemic, and so I think it was inevitable that it was going to get even hotter here, to be honest with you.
I think that idea of it being Brooklyn West takes away from the mystique that this place already had, that it has, separate from being affiliated with people who used to live in the city, like to live here too, and tell us that the food isn't that great.
Oh, it's in the New York Times. And did you see it? That was like the buzz, that somehow validated us.
Marketing, especially now with social media, digital marketing, perception is everything. And, and people buy in, persona too. People buy into these things.
So I guess that's my eye roll part of it, which is you're coming to a place that's already established. You're not making this place cool. This place is what it is without you. I bristle a bit at transplants, like this being a transplant community. Like, people have lived here, they grew up here, and they want to return here. Maybe they lived in Brooklyn along the way, but that doesn't mean that this is a Brooklyn vibe. This is its own vibe. Brooklyn people happen to like it. And how many of those people coming from Brooklyn grew up in Brooklyn?
Like my parents are Jamaican, and I feel like when they came to the States, like them and all of their friends, like actually, like funny enough, like lived in like South Orange, just for whatever reason. And they all like brought each other here, word of mouth, because it was like this community of Jamaicans who just needed each other in this new place. Like, I feel like that feels good and authentic versus like, oh, that place looks cute, I want to go there for the schools. Or like, it's really diverse, but like, how diverse is it if the same kind of people are the people who keep coming, and then the people who are making it quote unquote diverse can't afford to live here?
My name's Nancy Gagne.
My name is Audrey Rowe.
I live on Plymouth Avenue.
And I live in the area that they call College Hill, so I'm on Oberlin Street.
Community Coalition on Race is a pro-integrative organization. Our focus is intentional racial integration and true inclusion and racial equity in the two towns of South Orange and Maplewood. We work with other communities in New Jersey, and we absolutely are open to and have advised other communities across the nation. We aspire to be a model for the nation, and so all the things that we do, we try to bring out to other groups as well.
The coalition aspires to take integration beyond just a word to a reality that people actually not only just live next door to each other, but they get engaged in each other's lives. Everyone makes a contribution and everyone benefits equally in the community.
Are you renting right now?
I'm renting right now.
Do you ever hope to own a home?
Yeah, I'm thinking about it. I'm also thinking about the tax.
It's a problem for a lot of people.
Yeah, so I'm thinking, the business, they will always stay in Maplewood, but I'm not sure if the living is still going to be Maplewood because the tax is too high.
Rebecca Kern-Stone. I live in South Orange, New Jersey. I live in a neighborhood that's sort of split off from the rest of South Orange. We're like a little spit off of the rest of South Orange. So we're surrounded by Newark, actually. Well, East Orange and Newark, which is very interesting. Some people are like, isn't that ever freak you out? I'm like, never has freaked me out.
Honestly, I did not think I would ever be able to live here as a teacher. This is terrible. But then I got engaged, and actually one of my friends who still teaches here said you should look in Maplewood and South Orange. And I was like, there's nothing for me. And she's like, no, there are sections you might be able to do now that I had another income. And that's where I found the other side of Springfield Avenue.
I think there are areas of Maplewood that are more segregated than I would like. I think just the way the real estate falls, there are kind of natural lines in the sand in terms of what people can afford house-wise.
Things get a little cliquey in these neighborhoods, I think, sometimes, where people aren't always willing to you go to a playground and people aren't always willing to have a conversation with you. And I don't look like all the other moms. I don't have long hair. I don't pull it back in a ponytail, So, I think that for some people is difficult to address.
My name is Chigozie Onyema. I lived on Van Ness Terrace right off of Boynton Avenue. I think about it in the context of walking home from middle school. So the middle school is closer to Maplewood Village. And most of the Black children, we all walked together all the way to the other side of town. There were a few stops along the way, but I'd say the majority of us, pretty much came pretty close to the Irvington border.
Growing up, everybody knew if you want to see majority Black people, go to in Maplewood, go towards Jacoby Street. Everybody knew that if you want to see majority Black people in this area, go to Church and Third. So it's like we had our section.
The reason these towns, these sides of towns, or not even side, it was just like maybe one or two streets exist, is because of non-owner occupant multifamilies. If there's multiple 2-family, 3-family homes on your street that aren't owner occupied, then it would be an owner that lives in other towns, maybe another state, and he's just renting it out. So that would give the opportunity for a parent and children from, let's say, East Orange, Orange, Newark, Irvington, maybe Passaic, maybe Patterson, maybe Elizabeth, to move in here so their kids can get a better education, feel safer, just have more overall opportunities and more knowledge, and grow up in a melting pot.
One side of town has always looked a little bit different. Now, whether that means that the city has directed more resources elsewhere, I'm not entirely sure. But I think that it's always looked a little bit different on our side of town.
You think to yourself, wow, I come from East Orange. It wasn't a bad area where I came from. But when I came over here, it was a feeling of you're moving on up, And then it was disclosed that this area of Maplewood is actually considered Maplehood.
Do you remember the first time heard the term Maplehood?
Yeah, I do actually. I sure do. I was on a run with I rode with a bunch of people around my crib and neighbors and stuff. I remember I was running with them, and someone said Maplewood, Good and Hood. I was like, what are you talking about? I didn't understand that. He goes, oh yeah, the town is divided. You know, it's divided into three parts: Good, Good, and Hood. I said, well, I was like, that's messed up.
So when you say, "Oh, I moved to Maplewood," somebody will shut you down real quick. Like, what street? If you weren't above Prospect Street, you ain't saying nothing. You know, you didn't really move on up until you were above the street of Prospect. But it's still good here, and I'm glad that our mayor took offense to that term.
I think having more amenities, and where we can, where there's areas that are zoned for it, putting those amenities in there that are maybe consumer focused or retail focused will help. Because now I'm living on Van Ness, I can now I can walk over to the new place called the Bread Stand, not that new. But let's get a pizza spot over there. Let's get another restaurant over there. Let's get some other retail. Maybe let's get a pub over there. And then all of a sudden you get to see, because those are the anchors. Those are the things that bring that synergy that we're looking for.
Around 2016, people were telling stories, coming to us and saying, gee, in the early grades, we're seeing more and more white students. And it was cause for concern for some people. For some people, it was like, oh, well, Maplewood South Orange is going back. I kid you not, when I would hear that phrase from white people that we were, that somehow the towns were returning to what they were. And other people, it was a little more sense of panic, like, where are my black and brown neighbors going, or why aren't they coming here? And we wanted to find out, is this a reality? Or is this a population blip? So we did our first demographic study, and we found that this was a trend. Then we did a follow-up in 2019 to show that the trend was continuing. And while it wasn't threatening the overall stability, it was showing up in neighborhood stability and creating some racial isolation conditions in both towns.
If you want diversity, this is where you come. I question what that means to people. I was looking for that, so that is why I came. But then when you get here, you kind of are like, well, what does that really mean? That there are different people here, people look different. But what does that really mean if you're not engaging in ways to interact with those people who are so diverse? Like, if you can only live in one section of town, if you move to a section of town because you want to go to a certain elementary school, fine, but don't say that diversity brought you here. If you're trying to find where you fit, and that's all.
Maplewood South Orange is diverse in the sense that it has X amount of black folks and Y amount of white folks, but it's segregated. And so, I don't know that a segregated place is diverse, right? So if black people live on one side of town and white people live on another side of town, I'm just not so sure if I'd call that diverse.
My name is Garen Dixon. I grew up in South Orange and Maplewood. Started off on Holland Road, then moved to Union Ave in Maplewood, and then kind of settled in the corner of Academy and 3rd Street in South Orange. So we're at this like really cool, hip, vibey cafe, coffee shop. They roast their own coffee, cool food menu. It's 2 blocks from South Orange. Symbolism for me having the business not too far from where I grew up. I mean, it's solely because I knew I wanted to be close to this area as early as 20 years old. I don't necessarily know that, at least personally, that there was frustration that I couldn't buy a home in South Orange and Maplewood, because I think years before I even decided to buy a home, I was still browsing, looking at the real estate market, and I realized, like,
like property taxes were just astronomically high in South Orange and Maplewood. And I know that it's the housing market is really competitive in South Orange and Maplewood. So I didn't even attempt to put any eggs in the South Orange and Maplewood basket. I immediately started looking elsewhere.
I had it happen to us in Brooklyn. We lived in Fort Greene and I loved it and we wanted to stay. We wanted to stay and it just became unaffordable to us. And I felt like, you know, I had moments of like, oh, I belong here. I have lived here for how long? Gave birth to my children. I've raised my children. They're in the school system. Like, how is it that we're getting pushed out and we can't afford to live in this town? This is, you know, where this is our community. So I do find that I do sympathize.
I mean, that's like the argument of teachers who teach in a town where they can't afford to live. I mean, like I said, I can, but that's because I have a partner. So I couldn't by myself. And it stinks.
Especially for elderly, because let's say you're on a fixed income and you even paid your home off. You're still paying $16,000 to $25,000 a year in taxes. You may not be able to maintain that. That's $2,000 a month just for taxes, let alone if you still have a mortgage, then you're adding that in there. And then you have all your other expenses, medical and everything. So it's almost forcing older people who own their homes for 20, 30, 40, 50 years to sell and move out.
I don't believe the town can sustain its diversity because of the housing market. My mom's been in South Orange and Maplewood for 20 years, has never owned a home. If she decided that she wanted to buy a house in Maplewood and South Orange, she couldn't afford it. And yet she's been here 20 years because her landlord, within those 20 years, hasn't raised her rent once.
I think that less and less Black folk will be able to afford towns like Maplewood. I think as the prices go up, as the taxes go up, as folks from Brooklyn and different parts of the country decide to come into Maplewood, South Orange, it'll be more difficult for working class people, Black or white.
My father was able to have a wife and 5 children, and on his income alone was able to pay the mortgage and all the bills. It's almost impossible for one person to carry that burden alone in this day and age. Sometimes it's an impossible task for 2 working parents to be able to afford a house and take care of children and do all the things that our parents were able to do with ease, or it looked like ease. And you ask them now and it was hard at times, but we were able to do it. We got it done. Now in this day and age, you need multiple streams of income, no matter how many people live in the house, to afford to live in somewhere nice and stay in a relatively safe place.
When you look at the difference in the wealth gap between Black families and white families, the net income is 50 times greater. This again is a situation where we didn't sit there and shake our heads and say, oh, what a shame. What can we do to try to acknowledge that gap and help that particular group that's clearly disadvantaged? And so we're putting together something we call a wealth gap equalizer loan that's specifically for first-time Black homeowners. But you have other families who have that wealth there. And so they not only can pay their monthly mortgage, they can pay a great down payment. They can absorb all the additional costs that are included in purchasing a home. So with the wealth gap equalizer loan, we help to boost that cash flow for that Black family, that Black household who wants to get into their first house. We're so excited. We are working on the pilot now. We hope to launch it as early as the end of this year and certainly by the first quarter of 2022. And within that first year, we'll be looking to see who applies, what are their circumstances, what do they really need, how much does the amount that we're able to offer actually help, and collecting data that comes up with a recommendation to expand the program or modify the program.
In order to maintain the diversity of Maplewood and South Orange, it has to be intentional and things have to be put in place. And also the residents have to be on board and not fight it. Because from what I've seen and what I've read, there's some people here who aren't too keen on maintaining anything more than the status quo. And are just like, I'm happy I have my lawn, I have my kids, I got my signs, you know, Black Lives Matter, we believe in science, dump Trump, like here's a rainbow sign, look at me, I've done my due diligence, I voted for Obama, I'm all set. But one, like, people want to have meaningful conversations about, like, keeping Maplewood and South Orange diverse, or talking about, like, you know, affordable housing, which typically benefits people of color, they want nothing to do with it.
It is difficult to maintain diversity when, for all intents and purposes, the price makes it a gated community. I mean, you don't need gates to keep people out.
I would say I was a decent student. I wouldn't say I was like advanced as far as my studies. I would say I was right in the middle.
I was not good. Not good.
In high school, I was a do just enough to get by kind of student.
What kind of student was I? I was an okay student. I certainly didn't perform up to my capabilities in high school. I had a really low GPA after my first year. I remember that.
My name is Ricky Josephs. My mom was very active in my education and the school system. Learning disabilities were still not fully recognized and understood. So this idea of dyslexia and ADD was not brand new, but not widely dealt with and discussed. So they wanted me to be in special education all the time, full day, and it wasn't necessary. It wasn't doing me well because I was sitting next to children that were way more handicapped than I was, and without my mom's involvement, I probably wouldn't have went to public school. Their solution back then is, it's not for you.
I started school in the 50s, graduated from Columbia in 64. I decided to look through my yearbook, and we had over 600 in my class, about 650 in my class. When I counted the number of, I was looking for those who were African American in my yearbook, I found 4. I did not see any Asian American. The only differences there were that I was aware of at the time were that had to do with religion, that there was a predominantly Jewish, Protestant, and Catholic population.
I was in honors classes, and so most of the kids in honors classes were white and Asian. This is like in retrospect. At the time, I thought nothing of it. I was just like, I'm in honors classes, that's all that matters, who cares? And like, I had like my Black friend who sat next to me, and like, it was all good.
I do remember it being predominantly Black in my classes. I would say the classes that were decently balanced would be the gym classes, the art classes, the music classes, but not the subject classes.
You begin to associate, who's intelligent in the school with race, because if you walk by any classroom and you look into it, you could tell what level it is based upon the demographics of the classrooms. I ran for school board, yes. So we ran in 2005. The main issue we ran on was the tracking system. We felt that it was racist. We felt that Black kids were tracked in lower levels, not because of ability, but because of, in a large part at least, because of their race and their class. And we thought that there were ways to educate young people in, combined settings, and maybe you can have some differentiated learning within the classroom to ensure that people get the things they need, because tracking really was just, for us, a way to segregate students.
In the core classes, so I want to say that was language arts, math, science, and social studies, you were put into brackets based on your perceived academic ability. So that may have been due to previous year report card grades, that might have been based on standardized test scores, and you were tracked very early on in terms of what classes you would be most successful on based on kind of your academic profile. So if you were a student who was strong in math and had strong standardized scores in math, you might be tracked in a level 4 or level 5 class. What then would happen year after year is, especially in math, I remember specifically, if you were tracked on a certain path, then you were only going to be in classes with those same kids, because it sent you on a trajectory where you would not be able to achieve those classes if you were on a different track. So if you were on that level 5 track, you had, let's say geometry and then algebra 1, algebra 2, calculus. If you were not in that track, you would never hit calculus. Therefore, you would never be eligible to take that AP class and never be eligible to, get college credit for that course. So there were a lot of really subconscious discriminatory things happening that in the moment, I didn't realize, but now kind of looking back, I can see it through a more critical eye and recognize some of the inequities that existed.
I was in a bunch of the lower and the middle classes, and I remember thinking, comparing the racial makeup between the lower and the middle, and I remember thinking like, oh, there's a lot of like people of color in the lower tracking. It was just an observation I had, and it wasn't until later that I realized like, oh, like that's institutional, right? Like that's racism.
You know, I remember the debates, and you know, we called tracking what it was, a racist system. And I think that there were a lot of liberal and white parents who otherwise, you know, either saw themselves or believed themselves to be progressive or thoughtful. But when you start to bring up the question of race, that sort of quickly changed. And they felt like, you know, the tracking system was just fine. But then you sort of ask somebody like, what is it that, why is it that black and brown kids, or really black kids, because Maplewood and South Orange is really a black and white town. Why is it that black kids, why is it that poor kids are not able to be in these upper level classes? What is happening in the school system and society that's producing this? And what are we asking schools to do about it? So, you know, but that was a bridge too far for a lot of folks.
My name is James H. Davis III. I grew up in a town called San Jose, California. Moved here about 15 years ago to South Orange. So I heard about a guy named Walter Fields and Black Parents Workshop.
Walter Fields is a member of the Black Parents Workshop. The group assisted with gathering data for the complaint. Fields says the findings showed patterns of exclusion.
Students graduating from the same high schools with diplomas of different value.
What I ended up doing was just kind of putting in the back of my mind, I'd like to meet this guy one day. There was some event at the high school one day, and I ended up going, and someone I knew him, and he was there. And we hooked up and met for the first time. And in talking to him, he described a story with his daughter, who was a math whiz. And at the time at the high school, you couldn't take an AP class unless your teacher recommended you. And she was already getting good grades in math, and he knew, and she knew, that she could handle an AP math class, but the teacher wouldn't recommend her.
You know, there's also different level structure than when you were here. So there isn't a 2-level anymore. There's only a college prep level and an honors level and an AP. It ends up looking like college prep looks like a 2-level used to look like. And by that, I mean, it is more heavily populated with boys. It is more Black boys than anybody else.
For math, I was in level 3, and that was a different planet. And it was also, even the level of teaching felt different. I remember my math teacher in 10th grade. It was like our whole class everybody was Black. And we were like chill. We weren't like misbehaving or anything. We were just all Black. And that was it. Like, we made jokes and it was whatever. But our teacher showed no interest in us whatsoever. I learned nothing. I got terrible grades. And like, we couldn't ask for help because he clearly had no desire to help us.
From that lawsuit against the district, a resolution agreement was formed with the district to correct all these ills that had not only happened to his daughter, but other Black kids in the district over a number of years. And so 2014 is when that agreement was put in place. The only thing the district did after that, from a policy standpoint, was to enact the access and equity policy, which pretty much took the power of recommending classes out of the hands of the teachers. However, that left a gap, because now you've got kids who were previously kept out of these classes by a large percentage. And now you're saying, okay, you can take the class. But have you prepared them for these classes based upon your current or your past legacy of treating them a different way? And we felt like if you didn't have the right support system for these kids, they would not succeed as a whole or collectively.
It's difficult to say if a parent has to do this, but a parent does have to fight for their children, because who else will?
So I think if you do not have an involved parent, the school system will keep you down.
I didn't have the language to call them maybe race in class at that time, but I began to really understand that, like, there was something wrong with the world. It's not as if like this tracking system is organic and it just happens to be how everybody falls, and this person happens to be smart and that person happens to not be smart. So I began to sort of develop language to understand the world.
I think they thought they did enough by having the students of all different walks of life in the building, but they did not take the time out to make sure within the classrooms that there was still diversity within the classrooms.
After a couple of attempts to help, again, without much positive result, we became frustrated because we didn't feel like there was a lot of commitment on the district side. Now, generally speaking, the district is required to fill out basically an annual report for the government to say what the status is of their equity goals. But the government never comes back to like say, well, you're not doing this good enough, you're not doing that. So it became kind of this thing where the district realized, oh, they're not coming back to actually do anything. So they even pulled back even further. And so roughly 2017 is when the idea of suing the district on our own came up.
We have completely failed our children, and it's time that the school district is held accountable.
Walter Fields and the Black Parents Workshop have filed a civil rights lawsuit against the South Orange Maplewood School District on behalf of African American students. They claim the district deliberately segregates into less challenging courses.
We want the same opportunities for our children as any white family. And so the notion that South Orange and Maplewood is some integrated a community that's diverse and progressive is false when you look at the history of how it's treated African American children.
Currently, we have a settlement with the district, which means two parties agree in a contract, basically. If push came to shove and the district continued, for example, to not fulfill its obligations, we would go back to court, we would demonstrate what the district has not been doing, and we would request that the judge make it an order as opposed to a settlement agreement. Now, if you know anything about court orders, there are ramifications if you don't comply. Now, what could that mean? It could mean a number of things from a district perspective, from a federal judge to say, you're ordered to do this by a certain date. In my view, that means the county superintendent would be part of that, because the county superintendent looks over all the districts. So if your district is not doing something based upon a court order, in essence, you could be on the hook too. So then you're going to make sure whoever's in place there is getting it done. Now, how does that happen? I don't want to go to extremes, but sometimes there's a state takeover of your school district. It happened down in Trenton, right? And so that could be a result. I'm not saying it would be a result, but it could be based upon the fact you have a federal court order saying you must do something. And so we believe we have all the leverage we need to compel the district to do what it needs to do. But at this stage, we're working with the district like before. So for example, just last week, we had a meeting with the HR director to talk about how do we get more Black teachers in the school district. And during that conversation, we were brainstorming. And she was giving what she can do on her end. I was giving what I can do on my end. And so with those, efforts, we're trying to make things work in a very amicable way. But again, if there's going to be pushback, we do have some ammunition left in our quiver to determine how we're going to proceed.
What was the hardest part about your job?
The hardest part was living in this community that I'm part of and teaching here, and hearing what the community thought about teachers and the schools in real life stress situations. I heard things from community members, from people who I would consider not close friends, but acquaintances, that really bothered me and make it difficult to realize that that's how people really feel about the teachers here. That's how people really feel about the schools, and that almost like, yes, it's difficult.
This hurt to hear. My mother was a teacher for 30 plus years. My wife is a teacher in a nearby district now. I've seen firsthand the lengths teachers will go for their students.
Many times it might be an object, and I'm giving it those human-like qualities. So I'm making it do things, right? Because leaves don't really cry. What does it mean if I'm saying the leaves on a tree cried in the heavy heat? Can somebody in here? Yeah, Isla.
I kind of laugh when I come into town from Millburn and there's a sign that says, we're a stigma-free town. And I thought, not really. And I think for whatever generation it is, wherever, that there is certain stigma.
Indians are kind of like perceived as like, studious, like well-behaved, well-mannered, not like not getting into trouble or something. Even definitions of trouble, whatever, are kind of subjective. But I was a little aware, the impact that had. Like, I could forget an assignment and then talk to the teacher, and I could turn it in later for partial credit. So yeah, I guess that was there, and I probably did benefit from it. I was a good student regardless, but hard to say what helped, what aided it, and what didn't, kind of thing.
What was it like growing up in
Bogota was a small town, working class, Irish, Italian, Catholic, that's it. So I was growing up in the 70s. I met the neighbors, the kids next door, and they ran over and asked me if I was a boat person, which was referring to the Cambodians who were fleeing at that time. So that was 74. So Vietnam was on everybody's mind. And I think nobody had even seen close to an Asian person at that point.
Now to a family's outrage over what they say happened to their daughter in school. A teacher in New Jersey accused of pulling off the hijab off the head of a 7-year-old Muslim girl.
She walked up to her and said, "You can't wear this in here." And so man was like, "No, that's my hijab, it's my hijab."
It's been in the curriculum for a decade at South Mountain Elementary in South Orange. Fifth graders studying the colonial era, given an option to create an advertisement. One suggestion, a poster for a slave auction. Several students did just that.
For the second time in a month, outraged parents are forcing leaders at a local school district to take a close look at how slavery is being taught.
And parents like Tracy Jarman Woods say it became even more painful after what took place in a 5th grade classroom at her son's school in Maplewood, New Jersey.
There was a sale of a black child by white children in the classroom.
If you have the right proper training, and training has to evolve and continue, because as you mentioned earlier, how we look at our fellow LGBTQ community is much different than we looked at it 3, 4, 5 years ago, right? But you need to get training to understand how that lens is. And so I see a great opportunity for more training, especially for those who maybe have been in a tenure for a long period of time.
Comments get made by kids all the time on playgrounds. And comments have been made to my wife where they're like, you don't look like a mommy.
How's that make you feel?
I wasn't there when it happened. She told me about it later. I was pissed. I was like, "Are you okay?" And she goes, "I'm fine." And they also said it to Julian. I was really mad. I was like, that means a parent's not having that conversation with the kid. And it's not okay. What does mommy look like? It's funny because my wife goes by mommy. I don't. And my wife's the one who gave birth to the kids, not me.
African kid. I just came from Africa. And he's a bunch of people, and the language is English, but it's a little different. And with the kids, with the bullying and all this other stuff, it was a little difficult for him.
The other things people did in middle school is the clothes you're wearing. Were they authentic or not? When I came to school every morning, meeting up in the front of the school, so let's say school, Maplewood Middle, they let you in by 8 o'clock, right? Most kids came by 1:45. Everybody would gather, shoot the shit or whatever. Oh, you got a new Hill figure? Sure, word? All right. That kids would literally check the tags to see if it was Hill figure and it was Walmart. Hill figure? All right, that's what's up. Walmart? God bless.
People that like to bully people, they are miserable people. Don't listen to what they say, just you went to school and just learn.
I wasn't out in high school, but I got called faggot all the time in high school, which is interesting because this is a progressive town. So like I always thought that was a little strange. People are calling me a faggot, so they must know I'm gay. So that scared the shit out of me. That scared me in high school. It definitely stopped me from feeling like I was completely myself.
We lived on a shoestring. I didn't get my hair done at the salon. I didn't have big parties where you hire the clown to come in or whatever it was. And so I think that there was this sense that I was somehow from the wrong side of the tracks. And that, again, by association for friends, they want to be with the kids who are popular, the kids who are outgoing, the people who are dressed right, the people who say the right things. And I think we still want to project that as a town.
Like I said earlier, we get a little bit of everything, but that doesn't mean this isn't a great community. These are still very nice towns, despite a few hot-button issues.
Maplewood Trattoria.
My favorite pizza place in town is Reservoir.
Oh, Arturo's. That's not even a question.
Pizza review time. We're at Reservoir Pizza, Arturo's in Maplewood, New Jersey.
Well, I know the best pizza place.
The Village Trattoria in Maplewood.
Let's have to say Maplewood Pizzeria.
My favorite pizza place would be Village Trattoria.
Right now it's Sabatino's. Sabatino went to the high school. When my kids were little, we liked going to Rome and Gourmet after bike riding. Trot is for when people want different stuff, pizza and other stuff. Maplewood Pizza is for when we want it delivered. Reservoir I love, and one son loves, and then the other half of my family hates, so we can't really get that together. Sorry, Reservoir. Bunnies, occasionally, for the flat crust. There is a system. They're almost not like the same food.
I like to diversify my portfolio. And so the mood I'm in will decide what piece of pie I get. So being from Chicago, I love deep dish pizza. There's no deep dish pizza around here. I'm talking about a big deep dish like Eduardo or Giordano's with the sausage and the spinach inside, extra cheese with the hot red sauce on. Let's go.
I think Maplewood and South Orange was a great place to grow up, comparatively speaking. So when I hear people moving, or families, I should say, moving to Maplewood and South Orange, it makes me happy because, listen, no place is perfect, but I had a good childhood. It was fun to grow up here. So in that way, it makes me happy that, maybe younger kids are going to, we're not going to have the same experience, but they're going to grow up in a nice area, good area.
Huge connection to South Orange. My dad and one of my uncles still live here. I still do business in South Orange as well. I consider moving back here occasionally. I definitely do. So yeah, huge connection to South Orange. Still go to businesses in South Orange, like Bunny's Restaurant. I get my hair cut a couple doors down with another CHS alumni. So yeah, definitely.
All these years later, yes, I do feel a connection to South Orange and Maplewood. When my husband and I discussed possibly moving, either within New Jersey or a different state, I always find myself comparing as to where I would want to live to have this type of atmosphere growing up.
The deepest and fondest memories I have are of people I've been in community with in Maplewood and South Orange. So I think that, just remind, Maplewood, South Orange is it's a fantastic town. Many of the people who come every day to help me and encourage me are folks from that community who either still live there or have just kind of spread out throughout the country. I think that the level of support that you get from that community, particularly the Black community in Maplewood, South Orange, is just incredible. I think it's unmatched, honestly.
If I were to have kids, which I don't think I'm going to, but if I were to have kids, I would want to raise them in a place like Maplewood and South Orange.
I think I had a great childhood, fond memories of everything, and I think a lot of that has to do with the community that I grew up in.
Within a few days, I met my neighbor who lives 2 doors down, who's now one of my closest friends. And we have a huge community of friends here around the corner, and people aren't transient here. So I feel that my relationships are like really deep rooted, and, you know, people are going to stay, and we're raising our kids together. So I have a network of friends that I didn't think I could actually build. And I still have my Brooklyn friends who I adore. So it's like, I feel like I gained, if anything.
I still hold Maplewood dear to my heart. I still take my daughter here. Every time we visit from Alexandria, I still take her to certain areas in Maplewood, still take her to the village to go to Village Trattoria. Because, you know, unfortunately, where she's at, it's not like Maplewood. I just want her to get a little bit of it.
Tell me some things you just love about this community.
It's everything to me. It is the home for everyone in the family. Whenever there's holidays, everybody's here. Christmas, everybody's here. Thanksgiving, everybody's here. During the summer, the barbecues, everything is here. And it's those kind of things that make the house a home.
I'm very nostalgic and thankful for my upbringing in Maplewood. Having moved so close is obviously a testament to really enjoying where I grew up and appreciating what Maplewood molded me as you know, as a person, as a mother, as a professional.
If I meet anybody that's like, yeah, I grew up in Maplewood, I knew Maplewood, one of my first questions is, did you know my dad? And anybody who was old enough to buy liquor or just did anything in Maplewood either knew my dad personally or knew of my dad. And they always say, like, he was quick with a joke. And, well, I was going to quote, Billy Joel or to light up your smoke, but...
It's a little different now, but me, it was everyone knows your name. Even when I come here now, I still get, oh, you're one of those Mangums right there. I went to school with your Uncle Arthur. I went to school with your Uncle George. I went to school with your dad, Charlie. So, I mean, I love it. And not to mention when I see someone else who I may went to school with or grew up here as well, I mean, we sit down, we reminisce about it. It's phenomenal.
Some new information on the killing of 18-year-old student from Maplewood, New Jersey. 20-year-old Johan Hernandez has been arrested and charged.
They came on Friday. I forget the date, but they came and it was a knock on the door. And I opened the doors first. I was, I didn't know what to expect. But they came in and they broke the news to me. I was happy. I was happy and I was sad, But at least they got him, so.
You know what specifically made you sad?
Just thinking about it again, like the whole thing started again, yeah. And the fundraising too, that also helped a lot. Yeah, and also we have volunteering people that was going to door by door and share flyers. And people were also posting it every single day on their Facebook or Instagram or Twitter. It also helped a lot.
How are you able to maintain your strength during all this?
I'm not gonna lie, it's hard. I just take it day by day. It's very hard. Stay with somebody every single day. And one day you wake up, the person is no longer there. So it's very, very difficult. I just take it step by step. House being quiet, because the house is never quiet. He was either on the phone with somebody or he's sitting with me watching. He will make me to watch soccer by force. Because his room, he have TV in his room. But you be like, oh, the channel I want is here, mommy. The one I have in the room, it doesn't have it. So he will make me to watch the soccer game by force with him. And he come into the kitchen while I'm cooking, giving me a hug or giving me a kiss. Mommy, what are you cooking? Stuff like that. I miss those things. Or coming to my room where I'm laying on the bed. What are you doing here? You need to get out. And he will not get out. He will just lay there until his time is ready to go. Yeah, he was a mommy boy.
Is there anything else you want to tell me about Musa, about just what the last few months have been like?
It was happiness at my end, and I think at his end too. His birthday, we just celebrated his birthday. That was a big deal for me, and I think it was a big deal for him too. Him turning 18, I was very happy. I'm like, oh, finally, I have like a grown man in the house now. Like he's not growing, but you know, he's getting there. So I was very happy.
When was his birthday?
May 22nd. But we did celebrate it on the May 23rd, because that was a Sunday, and I don't work on Sunday, so.
What did you guys do that day?
I take him out dinner with his friends, and dress him up. He didn't like to dress up, so buy a suit for him. And when shopping, he's like, I don't want to wear that, mommy. I'm not wearing that. I'm like, it's okay, just for that day. Then you can send it home to your cousin. So we were standing on the line. We were going back and forth. Like, what is this? I'm not wearing this, mommy. And people that was behind us, they were cracking up because we were going back and forth with the suit. I'm like, don't worry about it. Even if you wear it one day, just ship it to your cousin. It's fine. You know? It was always happiness with Musa.
I'll close out on this. Regardless of what folks think about this place, maybe even criticisms they may have, I think everybody I've spoken to, they love this town, they love this community, and they can all agree that it is Maplewood, South Orange are a special place.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think? Why do you think? Or what makes Maplewood so special?
I'm optimistic. I think there's this continued opportunity to improve, continuous improvement. When I came here, that was the baseline, right? And I bought into or invested into or believed in that baseline from my own experiences of visiting a couple of times, from what I read, didn't read that article, but what I read, from a few conversations I had of friends who lived, maybe not Maplewood, but in South Orange area. And now that I've been here, I like to think that I've contributed in a positive fashion to maybe move that line. And I still think in whatever capacity I can continue to move that line, because it's really comes down to what we said earlier, Mike. It's like the people who live here and the people who come to live here, if you invest, in your community, then we will all receive the return on that investment.